Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prab, and today we're going to discuss about the penetration testing approach from a CISO perspective. In this session, we're going to discuss about the penetration testing strategy that CISO must be aware about. And I also made the similar videos in the past, so you can check those videos. I'm also making a new videos on a CISO perspective. So if you're new to my channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. My name is Prab Nair, and for more information, you can refer my LinkedIn profile. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Okay, so before going to discuss about the CISO perspective about the VAPT, let's first discuss about the basics of VAPT. So vulnerability assessment is basically all about the systematic review of security weakness in the information system. It verifies system is susceptible to any known vulnerabilities and assign the severity level to those vulnerability. Example, like we have a system A, we have a tester, we have a penetration tester. He first tried to discover the weaknesses in the system, like passwords, patches, and all that. So that is basically role of VA. But when you're talking about the PT, in the PT what happened? We tried to exploit the vulnerability and through which we tried to penetrate into the system. Like discovering the weak password was a part of VA, but exploiting a weak password and through that getting into the system, that is called PT. One thing you need to remember, we never do regular PT, but we regular do vulnerability assessment. So as a CISO, you must be aware about vulnerability assessment and penetration testing basically has a negative impact on the organization function. So prioritize this activity according to your business function. So summary is very simple. Identifying weakness, identifying the known vulnerability is part of VA, exploiting the vulnerability and getting into the system, penetrating into system through that vulnerability is called as a PT. So when you're talking about the security maturity of any organization, so as a CISO, you should know about the risk from a strategic point of view, from a tactical point of view, and from the operation point of view. So whenever we're talking about the risk in the organization, we have to define from a 3 parameters. So security risk are the business risk only when 3 risk characteristics is basically exist. Example, what is the asset value? Second is what is a threat associated with an asset, and third is called as the presence of vulnerability in the organization. Example, like I join one company as a CISO. So first of all, I would like to know what is the business they are basically running. Then I need to understand what are the assets which is basically supporting the business. Then I will try to identify the possible threats, and then I will try to identify the vulnerability. Because if threat is there, there is a possibility that okay, the threat is going to exploit the vulnerability, and through that they can able to penetrate into the system. Now example, like we have a system A, we have a system B, and we have a system C. The system A, the system B is generating a huge value for the organization. System C does not have any value. And we also identify the major threats against the system A and system B because these are the external public facing systems. So a lot of traffic is coming from internet to the A and B, but C system is part of an air gap. It is isolated. It is not at all connected with any network. So there is no major threat associated with the system C. So we discover the vulnerabilities in a system. We try to identify if hacker discover those vulnerabilities from the outside, he can able to exploit or she can able to penetrate into the system. So it is not necessary as a CISO that we need to patch all the vulnerability. And it is not necessary that, okay, we need to give same attention to all the assets from the vulnerability perspective. No. If we found, okay, this vulnerability is very critical and this vulnerability can be exploited by the presence of a threat, then only we need to work on the vulnerability. If there is no threat for exploiting the vulnerability, there is no point of implementing the control. So summary always as a CISO, understand what is a business, understand the applications, assets which support the business, identify threats, identify vulnerability. If threat is going to exploit the vulnerability, work on the mitigation. If there is no threat to exploit the vulnerability, then there is no point of implementing any kind of a control on that particular vulnerability. It's like a cost. Okay. Second thing, we also need to identify, if we talk about the system here, let's take an example. We have a system. Now in the system, we have installed some 7 applications and all 7 applications utilized by the customer. Okay, but we have installed one more application, eighth application. And this application we have installed for some enhancement and all that. It does not have much value toward the assets. Later on, what happened, we haven't give too much attention. And after 1 month, we have to remove that particular application from the system, but we have not removed that. And later on, what happened, we have discovered some vulnerability in the application. Now understand here is that application has no value. Still it is there in the system. Now there is a vulnerability. Hacker basically exploit the vulnerability, and through that he can able to penetrate into the system. So we would like to understand that, okay, any system you're configuring, just install the necessary services, necessary application which is required for the business. Because if you add on some new application, it increase the cost, it increase the attack surface for the organization. So two major fundamental rule when we're talking about the system security. If any system public expose have a public IP, it should not have a critical data. It should not have a sensitive data. Any system have a sensitive data, it should be in the internal network. Okay, so this is something, a best practice you have to follow. Okay, so this is the parameter of the security maturity we have. So let's discuss about the penetration testing approach. So we have a different vendors. We have a different methodology of conducting a vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. So this is something as per the EC Council, or this is as per the PTE standard that we are following. The first step whenever we go for the penetration testing is to sign the NDA with the external consultant. Suppose we would like to drive the penetration testing with some external vendor and all that. So in that case, you can basically sign the NDA first before even plan any meeting. Then you can schedule the meeting with the consultant, the one who going to penetrate or do the penetration testing for your organization. Because if employee is doing that, he already signed the NDA and other agreement when he joined the company. But when you're talking about engage the external consultant, before revealing anything, get it signed the NDA, non-disclosure agreement. So after signing the NDA, schedule the first meeting. So in the meeting, it is very important to set the expectation. What is the intent of the testing? What is the outcome they are expecting from the testing? Does it require to be complied with for any regulation, legal requirement? Does it need to be complied for any customer requirement? That meeting need to be planned. Then you will be coming to the stage where you sit with the penetration tester and agreed on the scoping. Okay, you have some 7 critical server, out of which you want to test only 4, because that is something which is a publicly exposing systems. So it is very important to define the scope, because by the scope you can able to influence the time of testing and the cost of testing. So scoping has been done. Now when the penetration testers prepare the proposal for you, which is also called as a rule of engagement. Okay, it is very important. You can request the penetration tester to notify some important details in the proposal. Methodology, like the way I have explained here, methodology. So what will be the methodology? Each and every phase, their time plan, like what is the time it will take. List of tool, because might be they are using some tool which is against your organization compliance and all that. So it is very important to have a visibility about the tools. It is very important to have a visibility about the tool usage. Okay, what kind of a testing it will be, what will be the level of aggressiveness is there, does it impact the system, if impact the system, what is the action plan. So all those things need to be submitted in the proposal. I have a few slides in which I'm going to discuss about the parameter that you have to consider when you're selecting a PT. Okay, so next stage is called as a reconnaissance, or it is also called as a information gathering. This is the strategy which is basically followed by the penetration tester, and in which he gather the initial information about the target, like website information, DNS information, IP address, network IDs, employee details. Okay, so it is all about how you basically want to drive the testing. One approach is basically start from whatever available on internet, then from there getting into DMZ and get it into the internal network, or one is basically start from internal, getting into DMZ and then internet. So it is all about the perspective of the penetration testing you want. So reconnaissance is also a phase called footprinting of the information of the company. Employee information, address, everything is gathered in the first stage. Then we have a second stage which is called as a scanning. The IP, the network IDs, what they got, on that they will basically perform the network scan to identify the live IPs from the range, and they also try to check which IPs are associated with the company. Then on those IP, they basically perform the port scan, because if you want to hack any system, if you want to pen test any system, we need 3 things: asset, open port on the asset and the vulnerability, because definitely what we need to exploit, I should know by which particular gate I'm getting enter, that is a open port, and what vulnerability I'm going to exploit on the port, I should know. That is why port scanning is very important, that give me visibility about what are the open ports we have in the system. And then I will basically perform the vulnerability scan to identify the weaknesses by which I can able to get into the system. Then once I found the vulnerability, I tried to gain access and I tried to maintain the access, escalate the privilege, and whatever the documentation we have, we will prepare the report. So this is the high level activity we have, which is performed by the penetration tester when he conducting a PT. So let's move to the next part. So when you're talking about the CISO perspective, okay, remember one thing, pen testing is a cost. It is not a free bird, okay, it's a cost. Okay, so before driving any pen testing for an enterprise, CISO should build some foundational questions. Okay, understanding of the business and revenue, not necessary every applications or servers need to get pen test. First of all, understand what is a business we have, what is the revenue is generate from the business. Try to identify the asset which basically support the business. Placement of assets, what kind of a data it stores. So example like this is the 2 dimension of the network we have. One network where we keep servers which is on a public facing site toward the internet, and one is basically toward the internal network. One thing remember, any system configured with the public IP should not store any data, because that IP, if it exposed from the internet, okay, and it hold any kind of a sensitive data, it is not a good practice. So one thing is that when any system which basically hold data, it should be in the internal network. So we need to understand the assets, what we need to pen test. Then we need to check what kind of a business we have and how they need to comply with any regulation. Is the PCI DSS have a requirement of pen testing in a year actually? So we have to check that do we have any business requirement, do we have any legal regulatory requirements. Then we also try to understand, is this application really required pen testing? Is the asset required really pen testing? What can be the approach of detection of attack? Do we need to inform my internal team about this attack? Because sometimes what happen, I would like to know also what is the capability of my security team. Tomorrow actually any real attack happen, how they're going to respond to that. So it's very important for me to understand that. And how we respond to pen testing in the production environment. Do we have a backup? So these are some foundational questions that you must ask yourself when you basically drive any kind of a pen testing in the organization, because as I said, pen testing is a cost. Another dimension that we need to understand is that wrong testing can backfire. Exactly. So when we're going for aggressive testing, one of the biggest concern in the pen testing is that it impact the availability. Okay, so we need to understand what is the experience of firm in the testing. What is the background of the individual who will conduct the test. Example like I was involved in one CISO project for one company, and they drive the pen testing with some organizations. Later on they get to know that organization also outsource the pen testing to third party. So first of all, understand the project that you're giving, is the same team is going to drive or they're going to outsource. Okay, first important thing. Second important thing, the candidate who going to perform the pen testing. You need to understand the pen testing is not something a baby job. It is not something a small kid job. Pen testing required maturity, pen testing required stability, pen testing required knowledge. I have seen a lot of penetration testers who have no idea about the concept, but they are good in tool running. So example, they have a dependency on the tool. They don't know the consequences of running the tool. So he must be OSCP. I highly recommend the person should be OSCP because he has seen the practical exposure or she has seen the practical exposure, have a strong understanding of the security process. So that's something I will definitely look for. So apart from testing, apart from verifying the vendor experience on pen testing and all that, my second most important priority is the background check of the candidate. Then okay, you can schedule the meeting with the pen testers. You can schedule the meeting with the company who are going to drive the pen testing for your organization and understand their approach of conducting a testing. Understand, like, are they using any automatic tools or are they using any manual approach? So now we have a 2 type of testing. One, you simply run the tool produce a report, and that report they will alter and present to you. Trust me, it has no value for you. Second is the manual approach, prepare the exploit the systems, think like a hacker and try to penetrate. That is basically manual approach. So try to understand what is their ratio of work. Are they doing automations? Are they doing manual? I highly recommend if they're using any manual approach, that is the most important thing, because that is something is called as aggressive testing. What will be the methodology? What need to be included in the report? Okay, do you usually have a better result with the on-site or remote pen test? Give them an option. Like, do you want to come to our premises and do the testing if it's an internal perspective testing, or do you want to conduct remote online? And if it required remote online, what kind of an access you need? Look for the past testimonials, see what kind of a report they prepare, and also check does they revealing any details about the client. Because today, if to getting a project they are showing their previous client report, then you can be the next victim, because for them the new business will be supported by your report as a testimonial. So see how maturely they handle the testimonials, what is the usage of the tools, what are the contribution of a tester in the security research. Example, like, are they good in the community? Yes, this pen testing is done by Akash, and Akash is a great name in pen testing world. They publish papers. Example I'm giving, okay, like I have my consultant, Mr. Abhishek. He known for his red teaming activity. He always remain in a stealth mode, but he wrote a lot of papers. You can request for papers, you can request for some kind of a research papers and all that give the visibility about his knowledge. Or sometimes what happen, pen testing need to be done in business hours, but sometimes you have a need that, okay, it should be done in a non-business hours. So that kind of a request you can do, because sometimes what happen, if you're doing a pen testing in a business hour, it impact your business. It's all about the perspective of the testing you want to do. So you can check how comfortable they are they okay to do the testing in the weekend and all that. So that kind of an approach you can basically try. Let's move to the next point. Now, another important point is how often to perform VAPT in the company. Okay. See, VAPT is not something we do every day. Okay. If your projects are very critical, okay, you hold very critical projects and all that, you can do vulnerability assessment only in every 2 months and 3 months to ensure everything is okay. And then PT you can do in every 6 months. If you think it is not a need because it's a cost also, it impact the operation, then vulnerability assessment you can do in every 3 months. And PT you can do in a year, or subject to the business requirement and all that. Because it is also matter, how often you want to do VAPT. It is completely depending upon the nature of business, need of business, and goal of testing. Along with that, before driving pen testing in your environment, you need to understand what is the outcome you need from a pen testing. As I said, we have a two perspective of PT. So example, like this is your enterprise network, which is divided into two parts. One is basically called as an internal network, and one is basically called as a DMZ. So you keep some host in the DMZ. Okay. These are basically the server which providing a service to my internet. Now I hire the pen test firm and I request them, okay, do let me know what kind of information you will get about these servers from internet. Use the information and try to hack. Example, I told pen testers, okay, find the information about my company web servers, email servers, use it and try to hack. So their approach is try to hack the DMZ resources, and from there they try to hack the internal network. 90% of the companies want to drive this kind of a testing only, which is also called as a external to internal. Now, sometime what happened, you would like to know what are the internal threats we have. If tomorrow, if someone hacked into my network, okay, already, or it is there in the network only, what is the further impact we have? So we connect the pen tester to my internal network, and we would like to know, how worst can be done if someone hack into the network. So that is called as an internal to external. So that approach is more about if someone hack, how he can able to steal the data. Is the data can be passed easily from my DMZ to the external network. So that approach we have called internal to external. So okay, we understood the outcome, or another outcome is basically we need to comply with legal regulatory. So set your expectation clear with pen testers, like what kind of a report we want, what is the scoping we have, because outcome is very important for us to understand, because based on the outcome only you define the scope, you define the testing, you define the level of testing. Then now, in order to prepare for testing environment, you need to prepare the asset inventory first. Prab, we're talking about VAPT and you're talking about asset inventory. Let me explain you. As a good CISO, Okay, you need to delegate this task to your team. Make sure you should have a complete detail of the updated asset inventory. Okay, you can basically follow a process like, you can have a system in place. Okay, you have a 5,000 system. Now attackers or testers can basically exploit any system in the network. So in order to bring the uniformity, what you have to do is first build the asset inventory, build the systems. Before building a system, build the configuration. Configuration management play a very important role for the information security. So build the configuration. Suppose you build the 5 configuration. That 5 configuration has been replicated to the 5,000 systems. So now we have 5 configuration only. So any vulnerability will be there. It limited to that 5 configuration only. So tomorrow, if I found a vulnerability in the Microsoft Windows 10, we know that, okay, we have a 1000 system from 5000 which is running with the Windows configuration. So I need to pass directly one patch into the 1000 systems. That is why it is very important to have a great configuration management system. So we have a configuration management. We secure the system, we delete all the data or we remove all the data, and now my system is ready for pen testing. Because now I would like to know if this kind of a configuration we have. Now let's face it, how secure it is. So identify which host it toward the internet facing and which one is external. Review the configuration, prepare the baseline integrity check. Why is because sometimes what happens when you're conducting a penetration testing on the systems and all that, it modify the configuration. So we will compare, okay, before pen testing and after pen testing, do we have a same integrity check? We use a tool called file integrity monitoring and all that, FIM and all, by which you can review this configuration check. Sit with the pen test team, prepare the scoping, then we check the capability and technology in place from the tester team or from your company team. Okay, how efficiently it's going to be do. So when we're talking about the capability and technology, it means that good penetration tests do not simply check for the unpatched system. Okay, they also test the capability of the target organization. Okay, so we have some benchmark we doing while testing, like can we able to detect and respond to information gathering? Like if they found some information on the website, from that information they tried to hack, let me patch that area. Are they able to detect and respond to footprinting? Are they able to detect and respond to scanning? Are they able to detect and respond to data aggregation, data exfiltrations? So that's something we need to understand. Okay. So question is now, what is the type of PT you want to do? So we have a 2 type of technique, non-destructive or destructive. When you're talking about non-destructive, it will not impact much system, like doing a simple scanning, gathering the DNS details, doing a social engineering against the employees, sending a phishing campaigns, using a ping tool. It does not much have an impact. And my objective is to more from my information gathering. I don't want any to disrupt any system, but somewhere we want to test the resiliency of the system. You would like to know how effective is availability and all that. Then we can go for destructive testing. We try to access against the client data. We will do the DOS and DDoS attack. We do the buffer overflow. We do the tampering of critical data. So this is basically called as a destructive technique. So during a meeting only, you have to set this expectation clear, like what kind of a testing you want to perform. Okay, so we have an approach of pen testing, like we have a blind test, we have a double blind test, we have an internal, we have an external testing. So when we say blind test, so in every company, we have a 2 type of team. One is called as a red team, and we have a blue team. Okay, so we have a red team and we have a blue team. So when you're talking about red team is the offensive team. They are the one who does the PT and all that. And blue team is the one who basically work in a defensive mode. Now in the blind, so blind and double blind is more about the awareness testing. It is more about behavior testing. You can say like that. So in this case, what happened, we will not share any information with the red team. So in a blind testing, what happened is we don't share any information with the red team. We tell them, okay, this is the product you want to test. We will not share any information with them, but make sure they should not be too much aggressive. They can disrupt the server. So we inform the blue team, hey guys, some testing is happening against the server. Make sure you should be ready with the backup. That is called as a blind testing, where we don't share any information to the red team, where the blue team is aware about everything. Second is called as a double blind testing. In double blind testing, we don't share any information even with the blue team. Let them taste the concept of attack. Okay, so example like we would like to know if tomorrow any real attack happen, how they're going to respond to that. That is my approach, because if you inform them this is just a testing, they will not take that approach seriously. So my goal here is that let red team do the testing. Okay, for the blue team is an attack. Let me check, can they able to detect the attack? Let me check, can they able to validate the attack? Let me check how soon they can able to respond to the alert. How soon they can able to respond to the incident. Are they compliant with the SLAs contract we have agreed with the customer? That is called as a double blind testing. So these two are more like a behavior based testing or awareness based testing. But when you're talking about internal and external testing, this is more about how you drive. You drive from internet and then penetrate into the internal network. That is the internal testing. Sorry, that is called as external testing. Sorry. External testing basically mean find all the information on the internet, use the information and try to hack. But internal testing is basically all about connect with the random switch and see, is it possible for me to do the lateral movement to the further network? Because our approach in the internal testing is that if someone already hack into my network, what is the further impact he has? So that is the perspective we try to validate. So question here is, what is the good penetration testing report? Okay, so it is very important to know the audience. Based on audience, we prepare the report actually. Okay, so it is very important to factor in the target audience and how much time they will like to be able to spare to read the report. Okay, this is just important for digesting your first pen test report as writing one. So if you take example of a CEO, so CEO, managing director, board of director usually have a minimal time on their hand. So as a result, they will probably not read beyond the page one. Then we have a CTO, Chief Technical Officer, as is the role is usually a bit more technical understanding. So they will probably go for the page 2 to 3. Then we have a CISO. He need to understand from a security perspective. But when you're talking about developers, IT, network folks, which is a front-line techies, they will read the vulnerability, findings they have been able to tool to fix. The finding section for them will be very neat, very clear. Okay, how to reproduce recommendation reference. So that's something we need more detailed. Second is summary. You can have high level summary, what you did, how you did, what is the outcome you have. If you think you have discovered around 15-20 business risk, categorized into top 5, which is required more attention, provide your recommendation. That's the most important thing. Keep a space for action plan, because action plan is basically something filled by the client. And then you can attach also screenshot and evidence, because whatever you claim to be that, okay, this is something, this is that something and all that, it should be backed and supported by the screenshot. Okay, so this is all about the report that you should prepare. So why you should know as a CISO? Because you should know about all these dimensions, so you can get it done from your team. You don't need to do this, but you should know how the report will be defined and all that. So if you find this useful session, do let me know what is the next video shall I make on CISO, and stay tuned for my YouTube channel, because I'm planning to make more videos on a CISO approach. And also I'm coming with the security leadership training program on my YouTube. I'm also planning to launch the full-time security leadership program from next year. So stay tuned, stay updated, and do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos. Thank you. Goodbye.